Hello, I'm Amy Zawi with the Jerusalem Connection Report Friday Red Alert for May 19th. Anti-Semitism, Anti-Zionism, BDS, and the UN. What do all these places have in common? A single thread. It's the first item on the list. An inherent, even supernatural hatred of the Jewish people and their legacy, which is now found in the modern state of Israel. At the core of anti-Zionism, a new term now being coined by some groups to offset the accusation of being anti-Semitic, that they are only rallying against the state of Israel and its policies, rather than rallying against all Jewish people worldwide or all Jewish people in the region. However, this statement veils the reality, or tries to obscure the reality, that with every anti-Zionist activity or measure that seems to be taking place, it reveals anti-Semitic activity, a harassment, a bullying, and a hostility towards Jewish people simply because they are Jewish. Take, for example, BDS, the Boycott, Divest, and Sanctions movement against the nation of Israel, that is very popular amongst college campuses, particularly sponsored by the Students for Justice in Palestine in the U.S. Clearly, these folks that claim to be supporting and espousing the rights of Palestinians and indigenous people in the Middle East are missing half the argument. They don't seem to care about the Palestinians in Gaza or the Palestinians in Jordan or Lebanon. They're not in a good way, and they enjoy very few rights, yet the Palestinians within Israeli borders are offered the same rights as any Jew or Christian living in the area. But indeed, the ills of all Palestinians, all of the Middle East, lie at the hands of the Israelis. Even when their actions are purely defensive, they are skewed and spun as something else. Remember, the charter of Hamas in Gaza is to reclaim the land from the sea to the Jordan, meaning no actual coexistence with the nation of Israel, but instead to remove it. It has been documented over and over again that the Students for Justice in Palestine, as well as many other organizations that support BDS activities on college campuses, are funded directly or indirectly through Hamas and other representatives. And then of course, there's the UN, with its cockeyed view of some of the most vital issues that face the world today. Issues that include Iran, women's rights worldwide, oppressive regimes from North Korea to China. Well, Israel seems to get the bulk of attention and condemnation by these well-suited, well-fed, applauding pawns who look on who clap on to condemn, while onlooking translators and other observers shake their head in disbelief at the nature of the bias, the accusations, and the ignoring of the ongoing real problems and their real causes, so rendering the UN impotent to actually legitimately identifying issues and finding solutions for them. So while we have Hurricane Haley in the UN now voicing some public opposition when the emperor has no clothes, Israel is taking on its own diplomatic endeavors, generating deals both militarily and with market trade with a variety of vendors. Therefore, BDS objectives seem to be failing. However, the movement is an uptick in hate on U.S. campuses against Jewish students. Anti-Semitic activities around the world are down 34% in 2016. However, on U.S. college campuses, it's up 45%. So it seems to me, while touting this fake mantra of looking out for oppressed Palestinian rights, Jewish students in the West are targeted by empowered Arab students for bullying, harassment, and open hostility. When a lie is repeated often enough and loud enough, unknowing college students may indeed sign on for this form of hate. I mentioned a few weeks ago these eviction notices and parking tickets and other Holocaust reminiscent activities are taking place on college campuses. And those Jewish students and other students who support Jewish students are feeling the pressure. These organizations, these BDS organizations or these human rights activist organizations, are not inviting roundtable discussions. They're not inviting an intellectual debate. No, they are inviting Vigorous anti-Israeli and anti-Jewish chants and protests in the streets, signage, plus pushback on anything Jewish on campus, such as a Jewish author coming to talk about his or her book, or artists showing a display, or performers who have a show to put on. They have no political power or ties whatsoever, and even if they did, they are still silenced by these groups by the pure nature that they are of Jewish descent, even if they're not Israeli. Here's another example of a setback. The City University of New York's Graduate School of Public Health on June 1st, 2017 is having Linda Sarsour, a prominent advocate of BDS campaigns for targeting Israel, as its commencement speaker. The father of murdered Daniel Pearl has openly written and protest of this speaker being on the public school college campus. Pearl described Sarsour as, and I quote, xenophobic, someone who has an irrational fear of Zionism and coexistence in the Middle East. Like Islamophobes, Zionophobes have no respect for other community symbols of identity. Caroline Glick also published an article in the Jerusalem Post that was republished in the States, noting the atrocity of the City University of New York, a publicly funded institution, to invite this particular woman as a commencement speaker for the Graduate School of Public Health. It's quite ironic, actually. If the City University of New York can invite a known Israel hater, what else is happening on these college campuses? Tanny Rossman Benjamin is a retired University of California faculty member and director of the AMCHA Initiative, a nonprofit campus anti-Semitism watchdog organization. She published in May of 2017 her research findings that there is an uptick of anti-Semitism on college campuses, and this amount of anti-Semitism is directly correlated with the amount of BDS activities that are happening on that campus and the presence of the group called the Students for Justice in Palestine. No other ethnic group under the sun would ever tolerate such bullying and harassment, and rightly so. For example, in the D.C., Maryland area, just last month, there were 2 forms of hatred against the African American community, one at UC College Park and one at American University in downtown D.C. The response was, rightly so, media outrage, administration's outrage, student outrage, various campus organizations' outrage that African Americans can be targeted as such to a form of hostility and hatred. What happened is that bananas were hung by nooses and placed in various areas that were predominantly African American. So while this was horrible and its due attention was given to it, and everybody committed to changing that culture as well as rooting out the culprit, Jewish students are not afforded that same attention and respect. Hence, the bias that I see. It is our duty to inform. It is our duty to find the truth and shout it out. We have to shine a line on it. Most reasonable Americans and reasonable American leadership will respond rightly when they know the truth. We are not an unkind nation, and we are not deliberately biased. However, we are often ignorant and uninformed. So it is with that voice for truth at the ground level where you are, as well as at the leadership levels of the UN and the White House, that truth can be echoed from various starting points from the bottom to the top and everywhere in between, and we can continue to affect the change that we have seen some sparks of in the last few years. God's hand is on this pathway that we are all journeying through, but we still have to do the work. He will give us the strength. Shavua Tov, have a great week. Shabbat Shalom.